As Sri Lanka celebrates its 76th Independence Day, it is imperative to recognize and remember the contributions of the national leaders who labored to win the precious independence. Among them, Ponnambalam Arunachalam stands out as a leading Tamil political figure whose contributions towards winning independence was immense. In memory of the service Arunachalam and his brother Ponnambalam Ramanathan had rendered towards gaining independence, statues of the two brothers were erected, and these can now be seen in the front of the old parliament, which is now the presidential secretariat. During colonial rule, the British were at the top of the social hierarchy, not because of the cultural identities, but for the political and economic power they possessed. European lifestyle, the color of their skin, and the power of the crown were all in favor of the British to claim the top level of the Ceylonese social structure. This apparent difference made the British the foreigners or Suddo and the Sri Lankans the locals. Although a multicultural and multi-religious country at the time, the British Ceylon had two main races, Sinhala and Tamil. The majority of locals consisted of two races, either Sinhalese or Tamils, and there was much class and caste difference within and among these two races. The Low Country Sinhalese were the landowners and were in the businesses, liquor manufacturing, graphite mining, fabrics, and so on. The Tamil elite were the ones who were educated abroad and were in academia and administration. The Ponnambalam brothers belonged to this Tamil elite. The duo were among the first to contribute intellectually to the independence movement. They joined the freedom movement in the 1880s. Arunachalam hailed from Manipur in Jaffna, and his family belonged to an elite Hindu Tamil caste called Vellala. Many members of the Arunachalam family were academics and were active members of the freedom movement since the 1800s, despite holding top positions in the British administration. Arunachalam's father was a high-ranking government officer working for the crown, and his mother was Sellarachi Amma. Arunachalam was born on 14 September 1853 and had two brothers. Formative years. Arunachalam came to Colombo to study. In Colombo, he stayed in an old-fashioned house near the present-day Horton Place filling station and attended Royal College, Colombo. In 1871, after receiving a scholarship, Arunachalam entered Cambridge University in England and completed his degree in law and history in 1874. When Arunachalam was leaving Royal College to go overseas, then Principal Barcroft Poe reportedly said Arunachalam had been the best student he ever had taught. After excelling at Cambridge, Arunachalam returned to Sri Lanka in 1875. After becoming the island first in the civil service examination, Arunachalam entered the civil service while becoming the first Sri Lankan to do so under British rule. He first served at the Colombo Government Agent's Office before serving as a magistrate of the magistrate courts in Kandy, Puttalam, Mathura, Paisala, Avissavella, Mathale, Kalutara, Batticaloa, and Kurunegala. In 1887, on the recommendation of Governor Arthur Hamilton, Arunachalam was appointed to the post of Registrar General. In 1883, Arunachalam married Savarnabal, the daughter of a fellow government servant, Namasvivam, and the couple had 5 daughters and 3 sons. The first census in Sri Lanka was conducted under the guidance of Arunachalam in 1901. The census proved to be a vital turning point in Sri Lanka's social services, as it provided credible and accurate numerical data about the Sri Lankan population. A few years later, a grand census was conducted in Great Britain, and the methodology they followed to conduct the census was the very same Arunachalam derived from Sri Lanka's first census. In 1912, Arunachalam was appointed as a member of the Legislative Council, and in the following year, he retired from government service. It was only after retirement that Arunachalam engaged in full-time politics. Although the Indian independence movement had influenced the Tamil elite of Ceylon to pursue their own independence, the Sri Lankan independence movement was also largely fueled by patriotic literature written in the 19th century. Research publications compiled by the civil servants, monks, and prominent authors at that time fueled the patriotism among the public as well as the likes of Arunachalam, who were politically engaged in the freedom movement. In one of his diary entries, Arunachalam had mentioned how he had dreamed that day how wonderful it would be if the country could go back to its glory days. Sadly though, even after 100 years since Arunachalam's demise, we are still trying to realize the dream Arunachalam once had. The Sri Lankan political leaders of British Ceylon had been following the Indian freedom movement activities since 1890, and this gave birth to the idea idea of a united liberal Sri Lanka. Arunachalam studied the Indian independence movement with much interest and admired the unity the people of India showed in their independence movement. He wanted the same for Sri Lanka, where all the races and religions stood together for a common goal: freedom. 1915 Sinhala Muslim riot. During the 1915 Sinhala Muslim riot, martial law was imposed, and under the guise of this emergency law, the British shot and killed Sinhala Buddhist freedom fighters and leaders. Angered and heartbroken after witnessing this injustice, Arunachalam put pressure on the British government, demanding an impartial committee to investigate the shootings. He constantly argued with the British rulers whenever an injustice was committed and wrote letters to international diplomats and leaders whom he met during his Cambridge days, informing them of the happenings in the tiny island of the Indian Ocean. He used his wit and language skills to constantly challenge the decisions of the British rulers and to verbally attack the governing bodies whenever possible, criticizing their oppressive actions. He emphasized the importance of reinstating Ceylon as an independent nation and constantly reminded the British rulers of this need, to point that he became a headache to the British. The independence movement Arunachalam led managed to make the crown replace the governor of Sri Lanka, which was a noticeable victory for the independence movement. In 1917, Arunachalam formed a new political association called Ceylon Reform League and became the founder chairman. This political movement had the blessings of all the leaders of the fight for independence at that time. The democratic activist Ahmed D. Souza, during a literature convention, opined that independence could only be won by all the races and religions working together as one. Arunachalam, Paul E. Pearis, and E. W. Pereira were also in agreement with this. However, during the same time, the likes of Anagarika Dhamapala, Walsinga Harishchandra, John De Silva, and Charles Dias were promoting the Sinhala Buddhist revivals in society. As a result, different race and religion-oriented organizations began to sprout and to bring all these different ideologies towards one common goal. The Ceylon National Congress was formed in 1919 and Arunachalam was appointed as the first chairman of the Congress. In the same year, Arunachalam formed an organization for the rights of the labor force, which could be considered the country's first ever labor union. Arunachalam also brought forward the idea of opening our own university in the country, and his never-ending request to the governor resulted in the British rulers agreeing to establish a university in Sri Lanka. Later, when the University of Peradeniya was set up, a building of it was named after Arunachalam as a tribute. Arunachalam loved the history of Sri Lanka and has even written a scholarly book on Sri Lankan history called Sketches of Ceylon History. Although a Hindu, he loved the Buddhist history and heritage of Sri Lanka and despised religious and racial segregation. When the Ceylon National Congress was moving towards a nationalistic agenda, he withdrew himself from the Congress. Arunachalam passed away on 9th January 1924 in India while on a pilgrimage. On 3rd March 1937, a life-size statue of Arunachalam was unrevealed in Colombo before the then Legislative Council of Ceylon and the current Presidential Secretary. Although the statue still stands firmly at the erected place, sadly not many know the real person behind the statue and the immense work he had rendered to win the independence of the country.